Hi, everybody. We're here to talk about secure brainstorming on XY stable images and pinning to major versus minor version in vendor templates for security products.
Yeah, plus
Cool.
orthogonal Docker and Docker removal and who's doing what and everything else. So,
Okay. Should I start going through these points, or does anyone want to start out? All right. So we currently release a Docker tag for security tools that matches the major release version for the GitLab product. So 12.10 stable is what will be released in 2 weeks. This currently is a bit of a misnomer since it is not stable in any real fashion. It's quite fluid, and we retag it with each major push of a release. So we should drop that. This just simplifies everything more globally. So that's a pretty easy change. If we actually look at in our templates, it would basically be replacing anywhere that has that. In the SaaS version, it's just called SaaS version, I think, with 2, because everything is really just version 2 right now. That means that when we release an analyzer or an orchestrator version of like 2.3, we also retag it as 2. So cool, that's a really, really quick change we can make in 12.10. And because we don't document what these things are, we can change it quickly, and we don't really need a deprecation notice for that portion.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the assumption that the versioning scheme that we're using for the analyzers like semantic versioning? So that, is that what we follow across all the analyzers?
I would say it's loosely semantic. We kind of have like we have a shift left semantic where
ish.
Ish.
It's semantic-ish.
The major doesn't really matter, but the minor and patch do, because of the orchestrators. So our dependency scanning and SAST orchestrators say, give me all of the analyzers with the major version matching my own. So SAST pulls on major version 2s.
SAST pull. Okay, so major version would be anytime we're making like breaking change or significant changes, we bump it, and so we could be potentially backwards incompatible. Is that okay?
It has been deemed to be okay enough for now. Okay.
Sorry, I'm asking you like you're the all hell Lucas.
Yeah, I think it hasn't been as much of a problem as I imagine it has for as long as we have been doing this.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
I ran into an issue recently where I made like a significant change to the license compliance image. So I made it went from version 2 to version 3 because I dropped the image size from X to Y. And so that got picked up, but also got picked up in all the older versions of the images because we rebuilt the 11.1, or I don't know how far back it was like 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, 12.4, 12.5. So under the new direction, would we pin each version of GitLab Rails to like a major version of the analyzers? For example, would 12.10 in the case of license compliance be pinned to like major version 3.x.x? Or would it, or does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's a 2-step process. Step 1 will be pinning to the major version everywhere, and that is in 207.128.
207.
Maybe we need to link all these.
Yes.
Okay. I have this list here, so let me. So I'll add to the top. Relevant issues.
Is there any value that we lose from moving away from pinning against the GitLab Rails major minor versions towards independent versioning schemes for each analyzer?
So
this has already been hashed out and not worth bringing up again.
I think it's worth.
Okay, sorry.
It's worth it. It's been hashed out in like 7 different issues in different threads that haven't had a
Okay.
single conversation. So yeah, it's worth it. So 2 things. One, if you are talking about us introducing new vulnerabilities, new rule sets into our analyzers, old versions will get those new rule sets. So it's a feature in the sense that we provide more coverage for old versions with new rule sets. But it also provides a greater liability in terms of breaking older things.
Right.
So that's the thing that we lose. If we're pinning to a major number instead of the XY stable, it's the exact same behavior. So this is just simplifying the way that we build things.
Okay.
And the next step would be pinning to the minor version, at which point we would lose that like hot upgrade logic, but there's discussion about that.
So if we were to like increment, let's say GitLab Rails 12.10 was then to pin to major version of SAS 2.0.0, and then we go to GitLab Rails 13.0 and we release SAS 2.0 or 3.0, customers would still be able to opt in if they wanted to by overriding the image name, but the default behavior for that version of that installation would be whatever the major version was pinned at, right? And so we're not, okay.
Yeah.
This makes sense to me.
With one important nuance.
What's that?
And I might be being a bit pedantic by pulling this out. It's not pinning, it's not declaring the version to be 2.0.0 because that pins to a patch.
Okay, it's pinning to the major.
Just the major. And so as far right as you go, that's what you're pinning to. And so
the obligation to the analyzers is to make sure that you have a image that is tagged to the major. Mm-hmm. So anytime a new version of 2.x.x comes out, it has to also upgrade or create a tag for 2 so that we can pull that into GitLab Rails.
And we currently release tags for 2 and 2.1.1. We don't release tags for major minor.
Okay, that's fine.
Part of the process is we need to start releasing Docker tags for major minors for our analyzers.
And so that because the major minor gives you the ability to receive new features without breaking changes. And so I'm guessing the rationale behind also wanting to pin that is so customers have the ability to opt into that specific new addition in that image, because today they don't have that choice. It's either the latest major or a specific bug patch or bug fix version. Is that correct?
Yeah. Also, another source of confusion that we need to be very clear about in this conversation is analyzers versus what we call our tools or security products or scanners.
Okay, so I'm using the term analyzers loosely to cover everything in the security products namespace. Is that an incorrect usage?
That hasn't been how we've historically referred to it in the issues, and that's one source of why we have 3 issues here. Whether we need to have that conversation, like 2 of these issues are over a year old before Docker and Docker deprecation and things like that. I think that with our path forward right now, it doesn't really matter, but I think that's something that we should all be on the same page of for this conversation.
Yep, I think that ubiquitous language is important.
I had a quick question on the versioning. So if you have a version of a Docker image that's version 2 without any minor version on there or patch, and then you overwrite that image, will Docker cache the previous version, or how does caching work? Because it's looking at the exact, does it look at the fingerprint or does it look at the version number? Because that's one concern I have about just linking to version 2.
Yeah, I think so there's the -- pull switch, which I think tells, okay, go ahead, the pull policy. So it might be dependent on the way the GitLab runners are run. If they're ephemeral, then they won't have a cache, so they'll have to pull the latest. If they are, long running on an instance, then I guess, like as Lucas mentioned, we'll have to double check the pull policy so that they do get the latest. Otherwise, you're right, Seth. I think it will, depending on the pull policy, it could default to whatever was in the local cache because it'll satisfy the constraint.
Okay, and so if you're saying pull, like to check the registry, it will actually look at the fingerprints and realize that they're different.
At the remote, what's the latest version of that tag? Does it match what I have locally? If not, then I need to synchronize my local cache with the remote cache.
Okay, cool.
Which was a big source of the air gap discussion around should pull policy be if not present or should it be always? Where for a air gap instance, the thinking was if not present meant don't reach outside the system to pull new images. because it should be air gapped, but we decided it should be always because we always want to be pulling images from the latest from the GitLab instance to ensure they're up to date whenever someone pushes a new version of the tag.
Got it.
How are we recommending people configure their pull policies today? Is that something that we provide in documentation, or is there some sort of configuration or settings that they can set? And this is a question for the audience. I know Lucas has been answering everything, but
I'm Googling it, but someone else can answer if they know.
oh, okay. So that's maybe something to look up if we don't know the answer on this call.
You're asking for the pull option for the orchestrator?
Yeah.
Because I just saw something related to that here. So that's not the final link, but there is something linked to the orchestrator.
Oh, so we can, okay.
Things like this.
If you don't set the pull policy, then a runner will use always as the default value.
Yeah, but that's for the runner. We also have pull options in the job definition as well.
Yeah, those ones in the orchestrator will go away with 13.0. So I don't think, so those aren't going to be respected when when Docker and Docker is disabled, because no jobs depend on that. So I think Fabian's working on removing those with.
Yeah, but it's not done yet.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Okay, so one of the questions I had here was for Fabian, so it's a shame that he's not able to join us, but we basically have these three issues which are ordered by, this one is 1210 right now, which is really easy. It's, we probably won't stop publishing XY stable images just so we don't have to figure out what the deprecation schedule is right now. That just means we don't delete some code from our CI template. The next thing would be to replace the occurrence of XY stable images in the templates with 2, which is the major version.
So at a minimum, all the different analyzers / tools need to start producing images with the appropriate tags that we can move to this scheme. And I'm quite sure we're not doing that in license compliance yet, or the license scanning image, so we may have to do that there.
License, as in you don't publish just a 2 or just
Correct.
a 3?
Yes, okay. I'm quite sure that is the case, but that is a solvable problem. We'll just have to make sure that it's there so that when we do start updating those job templates, we do have the appropriate images. And I don't know if we need to retroactively create the older missing tags, like for the 1, 2, and everything else before this decision going forward, or if we can leave it as is. We can't really change the templates, at least not that I know of. We can't change the default job templates for previous versions of GitLab without rolling out some sort of patch release for those versions, right? So I'm guessing it's okay if we start tagging based on major versions that we have today in those tools. Am I right in that assumption?
Have you checked your build jobs yet to verify this?
No, let's do that right now. Thank you for checking me.
Yeah.
Oh, we do have a major release. Okay. Today I learned.
Does license management have a major, minor, and patch, or just a major, minor?
Looking at it, I see just major, latest, and then each of the stable tags. So yeah, we don't have a major, minor, patch tag, but it looks pretty trivial to add. So we do have major. So then has this been done for all the tooling? Like, it sounds like the tooling might be already ready to go. It's now just a matter of updating the job template. And we're hesitant to do that because.
So there's two updates. The one is replaces all the XY stable images with the major version. That's easy. I can get that done in 12.10, no problem. The next one is the one that we're, okay, so I have these ABC under point 1 is the 3 issues we're talking about. The first one is the easy one, replace with 2. The second one, I think should be straightforward, but it just requires a little bit more discussion, which is pinned to the minor version within templates. So that provides people the same behavior of like slightly more stability.
Mhm.
And that one, the question I had for Fabian was whether or not we want to do, why he thought we should do that one in 1210, which I don't have a good answer on, because I think that we can push that one out to 13.0.
Okay.
Thomas, can you?
Okay. My argument, okay, so replace XY stable. You're talking, so that you're targeting the orchestrators, Docker and Docker, is what I'm hearing. Is what I've heard, is what I think I heard you say, but I was multitasking. So I'm going to admit my sins.
I would say for A, we can do that for everything. I don't think that there's a distinction between, we produce a major tag for all analyzers as well. So release, pin every single thing in every template to major.
That
Except
is
Dast,
yeah.
I don't know.
Don't
And
know
that's
about
why
Dast.
I need to ask
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Don't know about Dast. For static analysis, I would argue that we're ready for that step. And I think we're ready for that in composition analysis products as well. But that is an assertion rather than a statement of fact.
It looks like license compliance is ready to go. We can double check
Okay.
the other ones. I don't know what the state of those.
I'm fairly certain it is.
Yeah.
Is this an all or nothing thing? Like, does it have to be across the board, or can we do one piece at a time? And maybe that's.
I think the distinct units of work that are releasable are the vendor template updates. So,
Right, and I think that's what I'm getting at. Like, does this decision need to be, do we need consensus across everybody before any action can start? Or let's say if you're already ready to go in SaaS, is it okay for you to start moving forward on the templates without getting answers? I think we started having this conversation because we were stuck on making a decision, and I'm trying to like decouple that decision from action.
I think that this is a good use case for the distinction between issues and MRs. It's a fairly trivial code change that I'm happy to bump all the template to major versions in distinct merge requests, by which we can bring the subject matter experts into those discussions for that specific piece of code. So I think the units of work can be reviewed separately by the people who know what they're doing, but I don't see a reason to break this into distinct issues for separate discussion.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not talking about separate issues. I'm talking about let's just get the MRs going. Yeah. At least the people who are ready to go can start making progress, and then they're not held up by other conversations that need to be had so that we do the right thing.
I think the question really is, are we all in agreement this is the direction we need to go in? My argument is yes, but
I think it's a good direction. I'm not hearing any compelling reasons.
Requirements, I think we know what they are. We need to make it so that you can independently version every single analyzer that we can use. That's my argument.
The feedback from the most recent incident from a customer was like that was the expectation, and the fact that we didn't meet that was surprising to them. So it matches my own expectation.
Okay. All right. Now to the specific question of why we're not ready to pin to minor. It has to do with what has been argued many times in the past year, in that the update frequency of people running GitLab is very infrequent. They're not keeping up with the monthly update cycle of this tooling.
Okay.
And so as such, if we pin to minor now, then we are effectively pinning every customer we have to a specific release of every tool that we have, because the pinning is done in a vendor template within the GitLab repository itself. And so my argument is that there is a blocking piece of work before we're ready to pin to minor, and that is we've got to externalize all our configuration, which includes detection rules, because we're shipping data along with code at the moment.
I feel like maybe I'm misunderstanding you. I feel like it's the opposite, where by pinning to minor, we are providing more stable configuration. So if we pin to a minor version, then a customer who has not upgraded to 13.0 will not, their code won't change, and the analyzers won't change.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think that's where we need to get to. The issue that we're going to run into is that there is there is a lifespan of how useful this tooling is with the detection rules that are shipped with them. We need to externalize the rules. And once we do that, then we're providing a mechanism for new detection without revving the underlying tool set.
So you could update the engine without updating the code that operates on the engine.
Or the detection rules without updating the engine itself. So we separate those two concerns out. We do that, and we provide a separate mechanism for getting detection rules to these instances. Then I think we're clear to pin to miner.
Okay, I'm gonna play on. So we keep the same engine, but you have ability to fill it with gas outside of the engine without having to drop in a new engine. Meaning the gasoline being the detection rules. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the engine being the actual analyzer and how it operates. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to ask though, why would we, like, when we say pin to let me rephrase this in another way. Okay, when we describe pinning, the way I interpret that is like we're pinning to a very specific version in the job template. So this discussion says that we agree on pinning to a major version, which means that any minor or patch versions that happen to be the latest in that major is what you'll get as a major. Now, when we say pinning to minor, are we talking about pinning to a specific patch version in the job template? Is that what's being discussed here? Because
it would be,
or pinning to the major minor.
It's pinning to the minor, which gives us more
fix. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand now.
Now, what I'm going to say is that I agree wholeheartedly. We need to get to the point where we can pin to minor, because it makes it more declarative of which version of the tool is running with which version of GitLab itself. And that makes support a whole lot less costly and declarative.
Next iteration.
That seems like next iteration. But I would argue that the blocking piece of work is we've got to decouple data from engine. If we do that, then I think we're clear to do that. And I think that is a major version bump.
I think if you can decouple data from engine as well, you also help in the air gap scenario, because you've got a way to update the data, by other means without having to pull in a new engine, which is nice.
But it also becomes a requirement upon that data of work, assuming that's the direction we go to. Lucas is not. Yeah, Lucas is not looking at the camera, which means he's got his thinking face on now.
I have an alternative proposal on point 5 that we could explore, which is we pin to minor and we introduce something like a variable that is essentially keep hot updating our code. So we're providing a more user configurable option to pin to minor. The problem is that, like, if we're deferring the work of pinning to minor, I think that we're deferring stability for our customers at present.
Because you don't have faith in the major being stable enough.
Yes.
But isn't it better than our current state? Like, our current state's even less stable than even just pinning to major.
Well, I don't think it's different, because they're all retagged as the same things.
Right, but I just published a new version, Major 3, which then went and updated 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, which I haven't spun up a 12.1, 12.2 image to make sure it's working. We have a good set of unit tests and integration tests, but I would argue by just even moving from like 12-X stable to major adds value. And then from there, we can see if we need to add more value. Because I think the use case you're talking about is like almost like a, it's not even a use case. It's like you're trying to argue which one's more stable, right? Is it more stable to go major or major minor? And I'd say that both cases are probably more stable than where we're at today. So even if we stick with major, then we've made progress, and then we can talk about getting to major minor.
I think license compliance or management or scanning. I'm sorry, I don't remember what that one's called. That one is the only security product we have right now where major matters. Currently, major doesn't matter at all for SAST or dependency scanning. Both just rely on 2 for the major. So there's absolutely no difference there. So pinning to 2 is exactly as stable as XY stable right now. And they're both just constantly retagged. The likelihood of us bumping that past 2 to 3 at some point, I'm not sure, but like, I completely agree that externalizing the rules would be really helpful. I just I can't imagine doing that greater than maybe 14.0, maybe 12.5. Like that's the significant amount of work that would either require a generic SaaS engine for all of our analyzers or significant changes to every single one. So I'm just wondering if we're deferring it in favor of a direction. I don't know what
Okay, then Lucas,
the
I
timeline
have
on
to push
stability
back.
is.
I'm like,
Yeah.
if you're saying that there's major changes in every single one, then is that actually a minor bump or should that be a major bump?
It should be a major, but we can't do it.
It
right
should
now.
be a major, then let's make it a major, right? Rather than trying to repurpose minor because of the current constraints.
I'm sorry, I know we're off script.
No, this is good. This is great.
Here's my question. How are we deferring work by declaring which major version of every analyzer we're using within a vendor template today? If the path forward to pen to minor is to simply declaratively do so with the configuration options we would be exposing in this work today.
We don't expose configuration options, do it today.
Let me rephrase that. With proposed work in 12.10, where we're getting rid of XY stable, and what I'm asserting is that we're providing the ability to call out flaw finder image tag, bandit image tag, etc., as independent options, where those are set to a major version, which is what I thought was where you were headed with this.
So we do not. I do not think that in 12.10 we should be releasing individual variable configurations per analyzer version. That's something that we're discussing in 10.290. So I would not consider that to be part of the work there. SaaS, I don't remember what this is called. SaaS image tag, I think, is the variable that we currently pin to, which is not documented. So we just drop that in favor of 2 because it's not documented. Later, the idea is we would introduce a feature that allows each analyzer to have a specific variable. But I don't think that work needs to occur either right now because you can simply override the image, and that's about the same level of configuration by directly overriding the image in your CI configuration.
I'm a little bit confused. Sorry.
Why would you want to defer the work if it keeps us coupled at version number?
So, yeah, I'm trying to process that question.
I'm sorry, it's poorly worded.
No, it's all of this is pretty poorly worded because we use the word stable when we shouldn't and things.
Yeah.
So I think that we replace all of the variables in our templates that are all undocumented as far as I'm aware with the number 2. So we pin everything to 2 except for license management and whatever the deal is with GAST. That's one. We're removing a ton of variables that we provide for configuration that are undocumented, and as far as we know, no one is using those. Step 2 is to pin to the major versions in all the templates, and that's simply replacing the 2 with 2.1, and we have to release those Docker tags. If a customer wants to configure that or override it, rather than introduce 20 environment variables that map to those values, they can just override the image line, which is effectively the same as just like slightly less nice of a UI. Does that make sense so far?
I get what you're saying. I don't know that
Okay.
I agree, but I get what you're saying. So,
okay.
Yeah. So let me rephrase that. I don't know that I'm ready to cede the point, but I'm but keep going.
That's fine. And with that change, it provides stability for all previous versions, but it's going to hurt customers, and if they are on a previous version, they're not going to get the latest rule set. Maybe that's a feature, maybe it's not. I think that that's the biggest point of contention. My proposal for fixing that problem is to provide a top-level variable called something like pin to major, which could probably be worded better, but that's going to default to true, and that's going to ensure that it will use, I guess it'd be pin to minor, it will use a minor version It would use the latest version unless customer has set that to false. That way, the upgrade path stays the same. The default behavior is always rely on the latest. But if that is set to false, then it will use whatever was defined in the template, which is version to the version of GitLab. I should have made slides.
You're fine. Let me.
I need visuals. I think that like you've thought this through probably to greater detail than.
Let me ask a hypothetical and see if I've got your argument internalized. So end result of this, we're going to have the proposal is we're going to have one top line variable. I'm going to use SAST as an example. SAST image tag 2.4.0 as an example. With pin to major equals true, which means that it's going to do the same behavior. It's going to look for major version 2 for every single thing that we have. And that's the version. That's how the upgrade path remains consistent and the same behavior for customers that we have today. Do I have it correct?
There would only be one top level variable, which is the true false.
True false. Okay.
Yes.
If pin to major equals false, what pin to major equals false?
Then it will rely on the hard-coded minor version in the template.
Okay.
That way, setting that single variable to false allows you to have a stable configuration, but setting that to true means that it will rely on the latest major versions, and it will continuously have the behavior point in the latest rule set.
Why? Okay. Here's where I'm lost on that particular item. So let's just, okay, as a hypothetical, let's use 2.1.0 as what we have the version number in the vendor template, and pin to minor equals false. If that, or pin to major equals false. So we're getting 2.1 of every single analyzer we have. Why do we want to couple the versioning scheme of all 14 different SAST analyzers to that one vendor template with that one setting 2.1.0?
Because 2.1.0 would not be for everyone. If you have Bandit at 2.1.0 and you have Brakeman at 2.2.0, then setting it to false means that each one of them has their specific minor version that they're pinned to. So we're pinning a minor within the jobs at the template level, but there's a top level variable that is saying, if this is true, use the major for each one of these instead.
Okay, that's where you had lost me before, because I thought the assumption was that we had one variable that we were setting was declaring the semantic minor version that was going to be used for every single analyzer, and that's where my objection was coming from.
And I think a lot of these issues deal with that and say like ESLint image tag, and I think that I really, really don't want us to have 40 different environment variables that we need to manage and support for each one, because honestly, I don't see why customers would care about these things. If they actually need a very, very specific ESLint image version, then they can just replace the image line in the job definition with that specific version. Okay. I don't think that we need to provide like an interface for such granular control. Okay. But if we provide a single top level variable, that should provide the same behavioral guarantees.
Okay. I can easily see a task on our medium-term roadmap. Note the phrasing medium term. And Mo, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to take over this conversation.
Oh, please do. Please
okay.
do.
Where we're going to introduce capability on some of our analyzers, but not all. That would effectively be a breaking change and will result in a major version bump for some things, but we're not ready to apply it globally to everything. So let's use an example, secrets, which is bundled within the SAST vendor template, but has its own beast. It's got its own path and so forth, and we're probably going to want to experiment and use it in different ways than the rest of the static analysis or SAST analyzers themselves. If a subset of the underlying analyzers run into an issue which requires a major version bump, but not all, how does your proposal handle that scenario?
I think if we get there, then we will need to have we will need to introduce individual analyzer image variables. I don't think that we could support that with this scenario.
Okay.
And I think that's, I don't think that would work with our current one as well. So I'm not sure that that's a fault with the approach so much as we just need to deal with something entirely different regardless.
Okay. And I know I hit you with the hypothetical tomorrow, and that's not a reason to influence today. But
that's a fair point. And that's part of the reason that we should proceed with pin minor versions of SAS and DS analyzers. So my proposal was kind of a stopgap to get there, but we should be pinning in minor versions because it gives us that granular control. And currently, we cannot release a pre-release of any analyzer without shoving it onto our customers. Theoretically, we should be hitting the publish job the day of the release, which is essentially what we do with the SAS or with the release process for the orchestrator, but it doesn't really necessarily work out for the analyzers themselves.
Yeah.
But if we pin to the minor version, we actually can handle that scenario. So I think that we need to do 10.290 to get there.
Okay.
Which I think we could do in 13.0, but if we want to defer that, we can. It's just the most important thing is doing 207.128 prior to 13.0, which is get rid of XY stable.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Okay. And to make this less of an abstract exercise, and I'm still thinking hypothetical tomorrow, letting you know where I'm thinking we're going to have some divergence.
Sure.
I think with static and like keeping it on static analysis, because that's the roadmap that I have more internalized than the rest. Apologies, Mo. Is that I see us trying to go deeper there with deeper detection capabilities and trying to expand on a core set of what we're trying to do. A subset of what we've released today is what we're going to declare, is what we're going to focus our efforts upon. And we're going to get deeper within the current paradigm today on those. Secrets, I see us shifting left independently of everything else, so that it's earlier and earlier in a workflow, to the point where you may see this embedded in something like Web IDE or as a plugin for something like Eclipse or VS Code or something along those lines that you can check while you're coding if you're putting in a secret. Because a false positive rate there is going to be inherently lower than with our SAS tooling otherwise, and that's why. So I think they're going to get divergent, which is going to cause them to need to be measured to be versioned independently of each other. And that's why I'm pushing. But that's mythical tomorrow. That's hypothetical tomorrow. But
I feel like your argument is pushing in favor of pin minor versions.
it is. That's where I would love to get to.
But is that a different argument than not thinking we're ready to do so because we want to split rules from the engines first?
I think we need to get to pin to minor. I don't think we're positioned to change the behavior that we have today so that we can pin to minor. But we need to position ourselves so we can do so in the future when we're ready. The objection that we'll keep coming up on is the upgrade cycle of our customers on self-managed specifically. Is that it's too infrequent. You're looking at probably an annual release update cycle as opposed to monthly. That's the objection that's hard to overcome without that new capability. At least I haven't found a way to overcome it without it. And I would love to hear alternatives because that's not an easy bit of work.
Yeah.
Well, let me rephrase that. I don't need to hear alternatives. Perhaps I need to have others argue the point. But
I think that, I mean, the big point being whether or not hosted offerings differ significantly, namely GitLab.com and how that affects the release cycle. Okay, so.
Sorry.
We do not need, no, all good. I'm just trying to go over these notes to make sure that everything we need to cover is covered. Orthogonal to Docker and Docker. I'm not sure that this, I think that the only way that this is related to that in this case is whether we're talking about analyzer tooling versus analyzers, or security products versus analyzers. I don't think it matters in this case because I think they're all the same into major. Was there anything missing on this point that we need to discuss?
Pin to
Leaving room
major.
Yeah.
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 All right.
Ship it.
One small step forward. So are we okay with 1210? Is that what we're saying?
Sorry.
Did you enjoy that?
Sorry. One small step for secure, one giant leap for GitLab. Sorry.
Okay, so if we're deferring pin minor, do we want to consider proposal? Okay, so it sounds like we'd still prefer to push out pin minor past 13. Oh, I mean, I know that's what you're saying.
Yeah, because I don't have the same context as you, I think. I'm realizing that through this conversation, especially amongst the other tooling. I'm comfortable moving forward on major because I think that I have an understanding of what that means, but it's hard for me to commit to something I don't fully understand yet. So in terms of moving towards major, I do think that's an advantage from where we are today. It allows us to continue to grow. So I'd like to help support that. For minor, I think I need a little more time to understand what that looks like, and a visual or examples would help me. But also I need to get more context because it sounds like this choice isn't exclusive to just like one particular tooling, because it sounds like there's global variables and sort of those variables are going to affect multiple pieces of tooling. And so I don't understand the impact across those pieces. And that's why I think I'm hesitant. From what it sounds like that's being described, it sounds like pinning to minor is supposed to be more stable than pinning to major, which is a little counterintuitive to me, but I understand the goal is that we're trying to create more stability. And so I support a decision that creates more stability, but I do want to challenge, like, why is minor more stable than major? And and again, I lack context and understanding there.
The one sentence is we just retag major with every minor bump.
We retag major with every minor bump.
That's
That's a solution. That's a solution. Oh yeah, okay.
No,
well,
sorry,
that's what we're doing
that's
today.
the reason that major is unstable. Yes.
Oh.
When we release 2.1, we retag 2 as we retag 2.1 as 2. When we release 2.2, we retag 2.2 as 2. So we constantly override the major release, the major Docker image
but
with the latest version.
That new change, that like 2.1 shouldn't be a significant change over 2.0. It's likely going to add a new feature or change something, but preserve behavior. Well, correct? And so
within
is there more risk associated? Oh, sorry.
Yes. There is, but not within the analyzer itself. In the integration to legacy versions of GitLab that you are now providing a new version of the analyzer to integrate against. So by your own admission, I mean, and everybody's admission, the verification step for releases of new analyzers is against current on GitLab.com. It's not against 12.0 or 12.1 and so forth. There's the
Even
risk.
though it looks like we do that now, but we don't.
We don't.
Because we release 11.8 stable right now. That's pointed to the thing we just released a week ago.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's a little nerve-wracking because we don't.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the stability argument, is we make it declarative.
So with the conclusions that we have right now. Yeah. So with the conclusions that we have right now, which are populated from yesterday, focus on making stable work. That's having in 12.10. This is the one I think that I take issue with, which is I don't think that we need config options for independently versioning everyone. I would say 0.5 is a proposal to get like a happy medium between these two, but I don't think that we need to actually pin to minor until we need it.
Okay. What would you replace this with? Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Alternatively, add into We could either do pin to major true if we want to keep this behavior, or we just simply pin to minor without introducing new variables to do so. And I need to stop writing pin.
You're fine.
I don't know why we need configuration options to do this. We just pin to minor and then call it good.
I tuned out. What was the next step? We're going to pin the major in 1210?
Yeah.
Or 13.0? What was the consensus? Because we're running out of time on 1210 here. I think we have...
We're going to pin to major in 1210. The question is whether in 13.0 or beyond we pin to minor.
Okay, so for 1210, we've got some work to do because we want to get that out there sooner than later. And we're, I think, just about 2 weeks away here with some holidays coming up in between.
Well, and this shouldn't cause a change of behavior because everywhere except license management, XY stable is identical to major. So all it is a big search and replace in the templates. Well, not quite search and replace because every single template uses a different variable. Yeah.
I want to believe you, Lucas, but I want to see it. I trust you, but I need to verify. Let's get that
I've been
out there.
ignoring all three of these issues until everyone had a conversation about this. So I can actually start working on this like today.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, it seems like there's a bit of urgency now for this, which is a little uncomfortable because there's all these things with offline air gap stuff happening at the same time. So I'm happy to help contribute to make this go because it seems like it's important. It's going to, help our customers. We've been working on this for a long time. But we don't want to disrupt any of the things happening with offline air gap work at the same time. So if we can get it out there sooner than later and catch any issues before we're surprised, days before the milestone ends, that would be fantastic in my opinion.
So I think that, well, for like SaaS team, we can do this because we're already done with our air gap stuff, more or less.
Humble brag there. Real
because
nice.
We ship the rules with the analyzers. That's exactly why.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. But that said, license management is actually the one thing that's worth calling out here, where when we pin to major now, we're going to update the license management template to pin to the number 3. Yep. That means that we are breaking the behavior currently with the release of 12.10, because previously 12.9 instances will not be pulling in the latest license management version
after this.
So we're not backporting for license management specifically because there is actually a break, like a major version bump, but all the rest of the behavior will stay the same.
Right, and then the impact going forward is when we release a new version, we have to stop releasing new versions of the old images. So stop retagging the old 12x whatever images. So there's a bit of work to be done there still in the pipeline, because we want to be able to release a new version and stop updating the old images. So that changes how we, sorry, what was that?
Well, these XY stable versions are on the orchestrators themselves.
What?
We don't release XY stable for an individual analyzer.
Oh, okay. That's not
so Docker and Docker. That's where Docker and Docker is relevant here. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Different story in license compliance. Sorry, fellas. I got to bounce. Let me know what you need from me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mo.
Oh wait, were there more people on here?
There were, but we're 23 minutes over.
I heard a voice I didn't recognize. Who said thank you? Was that you?
Sorry, maybe I went to a different register.
You did?
Yeah.
I just realized I said fellas and I felt really bad for saying that. So I want to say thanks all.
Lucas and I harmonized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Across the interwebs and across North America. Series of tubes. It makes for great acoustics. Sorry.
This is turning into like a Three Stooges episode or something, isn't it?
Turning.
Yeah.
You need to be paid attention a little bit sooner. This happened like
Maybe
50 minutes ago. Yeah.
If anything, we're entertaining the YouTube fans, right?
When it gets up there, yes, absolutely.
Subscribe, like now. Hit the subscribe button.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Anyways.
Last item here. We have 3 separate issues, and that's okay, Mo. You can drop if you'd like.
All right.
Yeah. We have
So
3
long as
separate
it will.
issues. I don't want to have 3 separate issues.
Yeah.
207128 is fine. That's isolated. It's well described.
Mhm.
In minor version, which is 10290, that one, I think that we can continue having the conversations that we need to in that issue. And then 9725 is more epic-like, and 9725 has a lot of conversation. I don't really want to keep it around, so I'm trying to figure out if there's any tasks in that one that we need to break out or just close out. So I'm looking over the task list for 9725. Update docs, deprecate the user actoy stable. That's going to be covered in the 1210 issue. Update the vendor template to use major minor tag instead. That's going to be covered in the pin minor version issue. Update release process documentation is kind of covered in both. I'm trying to figure out if that last super group, is there any reason we need to keep 9725 open? I think Olivia said we should close out, so I don't think he thinks so, but.
I'm reading.
Cool.
CI config for the building of tools.
So if we ignore it, we're still going to be releasing XY stable images, which is fine.
Well, the one thing that I'm asking about, because we do major and we do major minor patch. That's what we're currently releasing. We're missing major minor.
Right. Okay, well that would fall under the pin minor version of Seth and ledgers, I think.
Yeah. So I was just I was trying to reconcile what was missing because there was something in the back of my head. But,
update CI config to release major minor version.
Yeah.
All right, and that's such a tiny unit of work. I might just take care of that. But cool. I'll make a note on pin minor version.
Yeah. If we get to those points, then yeah, I think we're good to kill this one with fire.
Cool. Okay.
The bias of action. I am almost guaranteeing that there is going to be dissent about closing this out. But you know, if we've captured the work that needs to occur and we're setting ourselves up for, we're giving ourselves the flexibility we need for tomorrow. Even if if we're doing it a different way, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's accomplishing the goals. So I'm good. But that's the one thing that I was concerned about is we don't do major minor Docker versions.
Okay, cool. On the note for number, the idea of 0.5 on pinning to major, I don't know if that's something I should capture in an issue, if it's something we should consider, or if that's not worth the effort, if we just would want to go to just straight up pin minor version.
I would argue that if that is going to depend to major in 0.5, if that's going to be implemented anywhere, it should be part of 10.290.
Okay.
Unless you're disagreeing.
The only point of the only way I would consider disagreeing is if that should, it almost feels like a separate unit of work where it would essentially be contributing towards the vision of pinning to minor, but without having it pin to minor. Well, no, I guess it would be because the prerequisite work would be pinning to minor with this. So yeah. All right, I'll leave a note on 10.290 about it.
Okay.
Cool.
And then I think we got it. Yeah, we've set
Cool.
ourselves up so we can pin to minor, but at the same time, we're not changing the underlying behavior.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll start cleaning up these issue descriptions too. Yay.
Okay.
And
Are you
yeah,
unblocked?
yes. I don't think that there is 207.128 is going to be really quick. So that's fine. And then I think the other thing that is a completely separate conversation is I'm going to turn my attention back to rules exists and what we're doing over there,
Okay.
which we need to talk about next for in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And there might need to be a conversation between you, Zach, and myself on rules exist and also detect by file type. Because I started realizing the mess as well. So what's on the board behind me? So pay no attention to what's behind the curtain. So they're color coded. The green is Docker and Docker removal. I was trying to get all of the issues that were spread out everywhere.
Cool.
And I was like, and who was working them? It's like, okay, who do we need to get involved in a conversation? Let's just hash it out. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think that's basically my understanding for composition analysis is that's just entirely Fabian right now. It sounds like he was essentially tasked with figure out how all this works together, which I think in his opinion is mostly documentation.
okay.
And the rules exist just came out of kind of left field because we had that issue that I got assigned, but it became apparent that that's more relevant globally. But I think that he's on board with that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a separate, yeah, noted, understood.
Yeah.
I won't make us redo that. And we've been talking long enough, I guess. So
yeah,
you got
fair.
what you need. So I can get out of your way unless you're telling
Sounds
me
good.
you need more.
Nope, all good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah.